Hello and welcome to Wellness Live. We're excited to have you. I am your host, Dr. Olivia Moses, and this broadcast is brought to you by the Living Whole program here at Loma Linda University Health. Well, I tried to get all festive for you today. If you are watching us live, we are in December in the year 2020. So now we are in the holiday season, plus we have COVID on top of that. And so it is now the time where a lot of us start talking about buying gifts. What are some of the bills that we had to pay? And then COVID on top of that. A lot of times the holidays can be very fun. And a lot of times in the holidays, we talk about finances. And we are also looking at the new year and potentially making some changes. So, with the year coming to an end and a new year beginning, I thought it'd be a really great time to talk about our finances. And I invited a very special guest. His name is Mark Hubbard. He is Senior Vice President here at Loma Linda University Health, and he's my boss. So, he is here to talk to us about finances. So, Mark, without further ado, I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Olivia. I think I'm going to start off here and I'll share my screen. So, as Olivia said, we're going to talk a little bit about finance this evening. If I can get this to advance. There we go. So you may wonder why we're discussing, finance in the context of wellness, and this data sort of explains the reasons why. Many of you have probably seen similar information, in various publications, but as referenced here, Fortune magazine reported that 63% of Americans cannot pay a $500 unexpected bill or a $1,000 hospital bill without using a credit card or borrowing money. And of course, we know from many different studies that money is a leading cause of stress in personal relationships. And also, as evidenced by this study that was done by the American Psychological Association, 3/4 of Americans are experiencing financial stress at least some of the time, and nearly a quarter are feeling severe financial stress. And we also know that financial stress affects all income levels and age groups. This is data from Smart Dollar, which is a Dave Ramsey program. And as evidenced here, regardless of your income level or your age, there's a lot of stress in society today. So most Americans are anxious about their finances. And then on top of this, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has created a lot of additional financial stress for many, many different families. We know that many workers are living paycheck to paycheck. And most Americans have significant debt, whether that's mortgages, auto loans. Of course, school loans have been highly publicized in the press with the amount of school loan growth, and then also credit card debt. So one of the reasons why we want to talk about this in the context of wellness is that we also know that stress really negatively impacts our physical and mental well-being. So as Olivia suggested, as we're transitioning into a new year in 2021, we know there are a lot of people that want to improve their finances, but they don't really know where to start. And my recommendation is that you consider starting with a plan. So as you probably know, there are many, many financial advisors out there that have programs available to help employees try to correct their financial challenges. Some of the ones I've listed here, Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, they're not only, they have television shows, radio shows, as well as they're have had top-selling books that have been published. Also, Ramit Sethi also is an author who published a book, I think in 2009, it was a New York Times bestseller that said, "I will teach you to be rich." And he talks a lot about living a richer life. So there's a whole host of individuals that offer these financial management principles and programs, to customers. And I think if you look through those, you'll find that there's some common themes among all of these different approaches. Everybody has a slightly different spin, but you'll see that first of all, they all acknowledge that you need to make an intentional decision or commitment. If you're struggling financially, you've got to make that commitment to improve your finances, which involves really making a plan. Secondly, we all acknowledge that these problems can't be solved overnight, but you have to start somewhere. So everybody encourages, to take baby steps, take one step in the right direction, and then follow the plan forward. Also, most of all of these financial improvement plans are built around reducing or avoiding debt. And then, of course, you also have to manage or prioritize your spending. And then finally, savings is an important concept or principle in all of these programs. So one place to start is really to better understand where and how much are you spending. It's surprising, many people, when they sit down and they start to actually track their expenses, they realize they're spending in ways that they didn't fully realize until they sat down and totaled up, the total expenses over a period of a month or 6 months. And then they're quite surprised at the magnitude of those expenses. And as you're going through and tracking your expenses, you really want to look at, to evaluate, are there any non-essential expenses that you can avoid? We all stop in at Starbucks. We spend money on entertainment, going out to eat. We may be subscribed to extra cable channels or services, or maybe we're considering going out and purchasing a new car. These are all areas that they're not necessarily bad expenses, or it's not bad behavior, but you really need to understand, how much of my spending is this in line with my spending priorities, and can I afford it? So you really then, using this information, need to develop a personal budget that will allow you to reduce debt and make savings a priority. And you should note that, even small changes in spending habits really can make a big difference over time. And this slide here illustrates that. This shows that even if you save $20 a week, which may not seem like much, but of course that's over $1,000 a year. And when you save this much money year after year, and you invest the money in some form of an investment account, whether that's your retirement plan or some other account, the effective compound interest is really profound, as you can see here. If you could achieve a 10% return, which is pretty consistent with long-term, returns in the stock market, for example, you can accumulate $506,000 over a 40-year window. So again, small savings adds up over time. The second piece of this, beyond spending, is understanding your debt. And a good place to start is, again, to make a list of everything you owe. Total up your student loans, your credit card balances, your mortgage. And as you're making that list, include the balance that you owe in these different accounts, as well as the interest rates you're paying and the minimum payment requirements. And then once you've done that, you want to identify the debts that have the smallest balances, as well as those that have the highest interest rates, because those are the debts that you're going to want to focus on and try to reduce first. So then once you understand, what your spending is and what your debt obligations are, then you need to really develop a personal budget and establish your own personal spending priorities that will allow you to live within your means. There's an old saying that it's not what you make, it's what you spend, which sort of explains how, a Hollywood celebrity who's made tens of millions of dollars can wind up in bankruptcy because they spend beyond their means. And we all know other people who have had a very modest income, but consistently live within their means and seem to do pretty well financially. So it's important to have a budget, understand what your debt is, understand, what your spending priorities are going to be. Then you need to focus on reducing debt. In order to do that, of course, you'll need to reduce unnecessary expenses or expenses that you've chosen to make a lower priority. And then also, of course, focus on savings. So as you're reducing debt, it's really important that as you're looking at, say, for instance, a credit card balance, you really need to pay more than the minimum payment. If you make minimum payments, you're going to be paying for years and years and years. You may never get out of debt. So you really need to establish a budget that'll allow you to pay something extra, towards these accounts. And again, start by focusing on those that have the smallest balance and or those that, have higher interest rates. Then if you get any windfall, if you have an unexpected tax return or some other kind of a bonus or an inheritance, for instance, there's a tendency to want to rush out and spend that money on something that you really want. But if you could be disciplined and use that to reduce your debt, you're going to be in a much stronger financial position going forward. And then as you're successful in eliminating some of these balances on existing credit card accounts and other revolving credit accounts, take that money that you were paying on that account and move it to the next account, which allows you to pay even more towards those obligations. This is what some of these programs refer to as a snowball effect. You get more and more of your income going towards reducing your debt, and it allows you to pay off your debt that much faster. So some of the fundamental principles that we all need to consider as we're spending is, number one, save towards an expenditure instead of borrowing and paying interest. I mean, interest payments are a huge part of some people's total spend each month, and it's a deep hole that is very difficult to dig out of. And one way to do that, of course, is to defer purchases until you can pay for cash. So instead of going in and buying items on credit, delay your purchase, and once you've saved up enough money, then go out and purchase that item. The other thing is that you really need to thoughtfully consider what are your priorities and what are those choices, how do those choices really impact your spending? All of us, of course, have things that we want, but you really need to ask yourself, do I really need that new car? Or do I really need a bigger television screen or a Rolex watch or maybe even a designer purse? And the important part about this is to make sure that you're aligning your spending choices with your personal priorities. For some people, a gym membership may be a very important priority that they're willing to spend money on, and they may not be so focused on driving the latest, greatest new car. For others, they have different priorities. So it's just a matter of really understanding that. This illustrates, again, how impactful some of these choices are. So this is looking at the cost of a new $40,000 vehicle. I just looked up, and according to most recent data, the average cost for a new vehicle in the United States today is about $38,000. So this is very consistent with that. And this is if you borrow that $40,000 to purchase a new car on a 5% loan for 60 months or 5 years. The average loan, by the way, in the United States today is about 68 months. So people are stringing out their payments over a longer and longer period of time, which means you're paying more and more interest to the bank or the lender. This results in a payment, as you can see here, of $755 per month for a car payment for this new car. And of course, the first thing you're faced with is depreciation. As soon as you drive the car off the lot, the value of that car depreciates. And during the first year, estimates are that depending on the model, that the car will depreciate in value by 20 to 30%. So if you take 25%, that's a $10,000 expense year one when you purchase a new vehicle. Over the 5-year window, it's 60 to 70% of the total value that's diminished. And then of course you have higher insurance costs because you have a brand new vehicle. And so when you look at that and you add up all these expenses, excluding maintenance costs and gas, you're looking at a total expense of $19,000 for the first year that you own a new vehicle. And if you look at that in terms of the impact after taxes, because of course you're paying for that vehicle after you pay your taxes, it really represents about $29,000 of your gross income. So I think a lot of times when people go out to buy a new car, they're focused on, well, what's my monthly payment? And they think that's their entire expense. But these are, when you look at it in the big picture and you look at the cost of things like depreciation, it's very significant. So, we all want to achieve financial stability, and these are really the reasons why. Number one, if you can achieve financial stability, it really does provide you with some peace of mind and reduces anxiety. And as we saw earlier, this is a huge challenge for many, many people in the US today. The other thing is this gives you choices. If you're in control of your finances and you're prioritizing your spending, it really allows you to spend money on the things that you want to, the things you love. So you can choose then, to spend your money in other ways that you might not otherwise be able to, like helping family members, paying for the, college tuition for your children or your grandchildren, maybe unexpected medical expenses incurred by a family member, even Christmas gifts. We're in the Christmas season now. Also, it allows you to pursue your personal passions, whether that's traveling or hobbies, maybe mission work. And then finally, also, it enables you to identify those charitable causes that you really do want to support, including community organizations. So that's a little bit about, the fundamentals of what you really need to focus on as you look at trying to address, your personal financial circumstances. And so I think we're going to pause for just a moment. Olivia has listed some questions.
Excellent. Thank you so, Mark. That was hugely helpful and eye-opening. And I want to remind all of our viewers who are watching us live, you can actually ask Mark questions live. So go ahead and type that in the comments section and we can pose those questions to him. You had mentioned the stress of finances, Mark, which I think across the board, people can get stressed out, and then it can turn into fear, and then it can turn into avoidance. And we start running from the problem. So what would you say to the person who is just fearful right now?
I think one suggestion I have is don't be afraid to reach out to other people. It's awkward, I think, for many of us, to talk about finance. And I think many of us were raised to, you don't talk about your personal finances, but you need to find a person, close friend, or perhaps a family member, perhaps your spouse, that you sit down and have a candid conversation about your finances, and partner with them to try to come up with a solution that helps you to find a way out of this mess. And you just need to start, start with baby steps and move forward, but find somebody that you trust, again, whether it's a family member or a friend, and talk with them about it.
So you mentioned your spouse, and we had a question come through that says, "My partner isn't a saver. How can I make them see the light?"
Well, that's a challenge. I do think you start by doing what I said earlier, which is to start by writing down, your expenses. Again, I think a lot of people, fall into habits of, for example, going to Starbucks every day, and they don't realize how much money they're spending until they are faced with actually sitting down and listing out all their expenses. So I think just starting that dialogue and showing that person, where the money is going is I think a good step forward.
And talking about where the money's going, there's a very big concept in wellness and health ed that actually says that you can't change something you don't track. And you talked about that in actually approaching your finances that way. So we actually had a question that came up about, are there any apps or websites you recommend for tracking expenses?
Um, there are many programs and systems out there. We actually offered the Dave Ramsey program on the Loma Linda campus to our employees, and we didn't have a lot of people participate, but I know that is one which is very good, and encourages people to establish an emergency fund so that they can, deal with an unexpected expense, and really is focused on reducing debt and saving money, which are really good fundamental principles. So I think if you go online and you look at, Dave Ramsey, you can get those, but there's many different resources. One thing I would encourage you to also do is, whether it's looking at our retirement plan website, which we're transitioning to Fidelity on the Loma Linda campus, or if you might be able to look at your spouse's, for example, retirement plan website. Those retirement plan websites have a lot of very robust tools, and oftentimes they include things like budget tools and other items to help you plan for the future and address your budget. So those are a couple of sources I'd look at first.
Oh, great. We have another question that came in that said, "I don't spend a lot, but have a lot of school loans, medical, and emergency debt. What are some of the things I can do to get rid of the debt when living paycheck to paycheck with just necessary expenses?"
Well, again, it's part of the challenge is identifying really what's essential. You may have to make some really tough choices about. I know, there's people that would advocate, for example, if you're driving a new car, perhaps you should consider, selling your car and buying a used vehicle that's lower cost, so that you can eliminate that payment and free up that money so you can use it then to pay off debts. A little bit later, we're going to talk about another program called a flexible spending account, which for those individuals that have out-of-pocket medical expenses, that's another tool that you can use to reimburse yourself and you save money because you can do it on a pre-tax basis.
Great. So with that, you just mentioned the FSA or flexible spending. Why don't we get to the next part of your presentation?
Okay. So next thing I want to talk about a little bit is a couple of the benefits that really do impact your personal finances and things that you really want to make sure that you take advantage of. That includes two items here I'm going to cover. One is flexible spending accounts, and then the other item is retirement savings, retirement plans. So at Loma Linda, like many other employers, we sponsor what is known as a FSA program, or a flexible spending account. Under this program, employees can save money basically by avoiding taxes on these expenses. At the beginning of each year, the employee is given the option of making a payroll deduction election. You can elect up to $5,000 per year for childcare or dependent care expenses, or up to $2,750 for out-of-pocket medical expenses. Once you do this, then those payroll deductions start coming out of your check on a pre-tax basis. And in doing so, when you reimburse yourself, you're avoiding the income taxes on all of this expense that you're incurring for the out-of-pocket medical or dependent care costs. Now, there are some rules around this. One is that the expenses, that once you make the election, you have to incur the expenses during that calendar year, and you have to be reimbursed no later. You have to submit all your bills, get reimbursed no later than April 15 of the following year. Now, if you have leftover money in your medical account, for example, you guessed wrong, you set aside more money than you needed, you can roll over up to $550 in a given year to the next year to use those funds at that time. This illustrates here a little bit about how the tax savings are generated. So you can see here in this example, it's a $4,800 election. So somebody's chosen to set aside $400 a month towards childcare. And childcare is, for those of you that have those expenses, know that sounds like a lot of money, but childcare is very costly. And so many employees are spending that much or more. But by doing so, you can see down below this tax savings, both for federal tax, state tax, as well as Social Security. So on a $4,800 expense, the employee saves about a third, or about $1,600 a year. So this is one tool that if you're not taking advantage of it, you really should consider. These are very easy programs to participate in. They're very user-friendly. This just shows you that we use a debit card, as do many other programs as well. And in addition, there's an online portal and a mobile app so that employees can submit their bills, using their cell phone, and check on balances to see how much they've been reimbursed during the year. You can use the debit card to pay, at the counter for like prescription drug co-payments or office visit co-payments, those types of expenses, and they're billed directly to the FSA plan. So again, if you have out-of-pocket medical expenses of any significance, or if you've got childcare or an adult dependent care expense, you really should consider participating in the FSA. Most all of these plans have an open enrollment window. We've just gone past ours for the coming year, but if you're not participating in this, I'd encourage you to reach out to your benefits department and ask questions about it. The second area that I wanted to talk about is retirement plans, retirement savings. And the retirement plan, of course, is one of the most important benefits that's provided to employees. Typically today, and now in today's world, those benefits are more often than not delivered either in what is called a 403B or a 401k plan. The 403B applies to a not-for-profit employer like we are at Loma Linda. A for-profit company would offer a 401k plan, but they function the same way. And under most of these plans, there's an opportunity for an employee to receive a matching benefit. So if the employee contributes to the plan, they get an immediate benefit added to their retirement plan. This provides, of course, an immediate increase in your retirement savings. And one of the really powerful things about these retirement programs is that employee contributions are typically and can be made pre-tax, which means that your principal and all of your investment earnings over your entire career continue to accrue in your retirement plan on a pre-tax basis. You're not going to pay any taxes on any of those monies until the time that you retire and you take that money out of the account. And presumably at that time, you'll have a lower income and be in a lower tax bracket as you retire. These are the Loma Linda employer plans that we sponsor. And again, our plans are very similar to what you see in other employers as well. And as referenced here, the vast majority of our workforce are covered under what is known as the Adventist Healthcare Retirement Plan. That plan is actually being extended to the university staff effective January 1st. So the vast majority of our staff are covered under that plan. And this, again, works like other similar plans in the marketplace. There's two actually buckets of money for this plan. One is a 401A plan, which includes all of the employer contributions. And the second bucket of money is a 403B plan, which is basically just a separate account that holds the employee funding. So the way this works is that every employee who's an benefit eligible employee receives a basic benefit. The basic benefit is 3%, in our case, 3% of your wages. And then on top of that, if for those individuals that have earnings that go beyond the Social Security wage base, they receive an additional 2% on top. So again, with regards to whether you participate in the plan or contribute to the plan, everybody gets the 3%. But for those employees that contribute their own funds, they also qualify for this matching benefit. And the matching benefit, as referenced here, is 50% of the first 6% of your earnings. So you get an additional 3%, or effectively double your retirement plan benefit. Now that matching benefit, we contribute every pay period. So as you contribute to the plan, you receive the matching benefit. So you continue to accrue investment earnings throughout the year on those matching benefits. So this shows you sort of what this looks like from an employee perspective. If I want to contribute 6% of my wages to make sure that I get my maximum benefit, and I earn an annual salary of $40,000, you can see that that comes out to $92 roughly a paycheck. Then the employee throughout the year will wind up receiving, at the year end, a $1,200 benefit for the match, and another $1,200 annual benefit for the basic benefit. So the total retirement benefit is doubled at $2,400 because the employee contributed. You can see as well that that means when you combine both the employee and employer contribution to the plan, employees are setting aside about 12% of their total annual earnings in the retirement plan. At that kind of a savings rate, you're going to be in great shape. If you work for a 40-year period and you contribute 12% of your income and accumulate investment earnings, you're going to be in really good shape when you come around to retirement age. And again, sorry about that. With wonders of technology, I lost my internet connection, so I apologize. I'm going to go back to sharing screen.
No problem. Welcome back.
Yep, sorry about that. Not sure what happened. So this is the same information, same illustration showing somebody with a $60,000 annual wage. And again, they would receive a benefit of about $3,600. which again represents about 12% of their annual income. And in the case of a $60,000 annual wage, the payroll deduction really on a net basis only is about $7 a day. So, you can probably find an opportunity to find that $7 so that you can maximize your benefit. So you might ask, well, do I really need to contribute to the plan? I mean, I'm going to get the employer basic benefit regardless, but this exhibit here illustrates the impact of that employer contribution. So you can see that by contributing to the plan and receiving both the basic and the match, the accumulated funding in your retirement plan is doubled over your career. And then when you combine that with the amount that you're contributing to the plan, you can see again that amount doubles again. So this becomes very, very powerful when you contribute to the plan, receive the match, and are also contributing towards your retirement funding. So ultimately, based on these assumptions here, with a $40,000 a year employee and their salary increasing from year to year, that employee would accumulate about 1.4 million in their retirement plan. And you might wonder, well, is that really enough? And if you look at this, the general rule of thumb that is used in the financial management world or the retirement planning world is 4%, that you should plan to draw down about 4% of your balance each year. So if you apply that to the $1.4 million balance we have here, you can see that the retirement plan would generate about $57,000 in annual income. And then when you combine that with Social Security, the total income for that employee is $110,000. Which sounds like a lot, but of course, with inflation, if somebody's income is going up every year over a 40-year career, that your income would be expected to go from 40,000 to like 192,000. But nonetheless, even at 192,000, at the time you retire, based on those funding parameters that I've just described, you should replace almost 60% of your income. And of course, these numbers will vary based on your actual rates of return. But at 60% of your income, you're going to be in really pretty good shape, because your expenses are in all likelihood are going to be much lower at the time that you retire. Hopefully you've been able to pay off your house. You no longer have childcare expenses and tuition costs for your children, that sort of thing. So at 58%, you're in pretty good shape for your retirement. One final thing I want to talk about is just the timing of when you save money. There's a tremendous difference in the outcome if you can get started saving for the future early in your career, particularly. So this is looking at two different employees, one starting to fund their retirement benefit or starting to save for retirement at age 25, and another person starting at age 45. And they both contribute the same amount. So they contribute $100 per pay period for 20 years. And then we look at their balance at the end of their career. And by contributing early on in your career, the first 20 years from age 25 to 45, you can see that you have triple the amount of money that you would have if you wait and only start contributing when you reach age 45, contribute the same amount to age 65. So this just shows you the power of compound interest and how important it is for you to save early. So ultimately, it's kind of a summary, that the keys to a secure financial future really come down to, making a plan, including a personal budget and a plan to save. Thoughtfully consider your spending priorities. Make sure you understand the full impact of making your spending choices. And it's not to say that spending money is a bad thing. We all want to live life. We don't live just to save our money. So it just makes sure that the spending that you're doing is consistent with your personal priorities. Again, as I just illustrated, if you can save early, it's very, very powerful because of the impact of compound interest. And then for all of us, it's a really good idea to try to make saving a priority. Find a way to set aside at least a small amount of money in a savings account consistently. And then, as I explained earlier, we really want to make sure that you maximize any available employer retirement benefit, either through your plan and or your spouse's plan. And then finally, reduce or avoid debt. That debt spiral is a tremendous challenge and is the primary reason why most people wind up in financial distress. So if you can avoid debt, you're so much better off. If you are really feeling, stressed severely or depressed about, your current financial circumstances, I would just give you a couple of pointers. One is, avoid obsessing about your investments in your retirement account. Don't look up your account every single day and to be anxious about what's happening. You really have to maintain a long-term perspective. Recognize that you're not going to be tapping into your retirement account right away, and take a long-term view. Don't move your money around. Second, another point is, as we talked about earlier in the earlier question, is if you're feeling stressed, reach out to a family member or a personal friend to talk that through. And then ultimately, if you really are suffering with depression, be willing to reach out and receive professional help. This is an area that a lot of people struggle with. You're not alone. And there are a lot of really good resources to help support you. If you're on the Loma Linda campus, we offer an employee assistance program. If you simply call our main number 558-4000 and ask for the EAP, the operator will direct you to that resource and they can provide you with professional help. So with that, Olivia, I'll stop and pause for questions. Olivia, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Well, like I said, thank you so, Mark. That was super informative, extremely informative, very good information. And the questions are coming through, and we're not going to have time to get to all of them. So I just want to apologize to all the viewers out there. But one of the questions we have is, what is the best investment for my money to improve my financial future, and what is the worst?
So I think I covered both of those as I went through this presentation. Probably, in my view, the best thing for most people, if they have a matching opportunity on a retirement plan, make sure that you take advantage of that, because you get an immediate, in some cases, employers match dollar for dollar. In other cases, it's 50%. But that's an unbeatable arrangement. If you can get a matching benefit and then increase your retirement savings, that's probably the very first thing you should do with any extra money that you have. In terms of those things that are the biggest financial challenge or create the biggest burden, it's probably purchasing a new car. If you purchase real estate or any number of other items, at least those items don't immediately depreciate. Cars are quite expensive, as we looked at, and they depreciate. They only go down in value. If you choose to drive a used car throughout your life as opposed to a brand new model every year, it's a tremendous difference in the financial outcome. So I recognize that there's times where we all need to get a new car. We need a reliable source of transportation. And so it's not that buying a new car is always a bad thing, but just be very thoughtful and make sure you understand the full cost.
Okay, great. Another question that we have here is, can I save money in a retirement fund now if I'm not currently a benefit eligible employee?
If you're like a per diem worker or somebody who works part-time, generally speaking, the answer to that is yes. Most plans allow you to contribute to the plan. You won't necessarily get the employer benefit or the matching benefit, but as an employee, you can participate and you still benefit from the pre-tax contribution and the accumulation of pre-tax investment earnings.
Okay, great. We have another one. We're going to try to get to as many as possible. Would you recommend taking another loan or withdrawing from my retirement fund to pay for an emergency expenditure?
You really should try to avoid that if at all possible. People oftentimes will borrow against their retirement plan because it's relatively easy to do it, and it becomes kind of a big pot of money that people start going to. The problem with that is that, in spite of our good intentions, a lot of times it takes a long time before somebody pays that money back. And in the meantime, you're really, eroding your retirement savings, and you're not achieving the rate of return that you need to have an adequate, retirement fund when you reach normal retirement age. So you really should try to avoid that and try to look at other opportunities to cut expenses, perhaps, so that you can avoid borrowing from your retirement plan. It's a fairly common thing. Many employees do borrow from their retirement plan, but it's very difficult to dig out of that hole.
Okay. And we only have time for one more question, so I apologize to all our viewers that we didn't get to. But here's one. Should I focus on paying off my house or input more money into my retirement savings?
It sort of depends on the individual circumstances, but I would say generally you want to maximize your retirement savings first. Bear in mind that you still do get a tax deduction for the interest payments that you're making on a mortgage, and mortgage payments right now are at an all-time mortgage rates are at an all-time low. So if you have a high mortgage rate, you should probably look at refinancing. But most of the money that you're paying towards your mortgage is really going towards principal. You're paying a very, very low rate. There's probably a greater missed opportunity by not contributing to the retirement plan. So I would say if you have to choose, I would probably choose to fund your retirement benefit.
Okay, great. Well, we could keep you all day here, Mark, with all of these questions, but just wanted to thank you so much for your time and thank each of you for joining us for Wellness Live. And we want to wish you all a happy, happy holiday. Our next Wellness Live for 2021 is going to be on January 27. So please don't miss out. And again, from our Living Whole and Whole Wellness Live family to yours, we want to just wish you a wonderful